Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick preview for the Sony Alpha A7R Mark II. Priced at $3,200 US, this is the most expensive full-frame mirrorless camera Sony has made since the VG900 back in 2012, but it's also easily the most impressive. This isn't what you would traditionally expect in a second-gen refresh of the, of course, original A7R that it is succeeding, but its predecessor was a beast, no question about it, that was rough around the edges. Sony has pretty much upgraded everything that the A7R brought, so again, not a traditional bump up in specifications. First and foremost, we have a new sensor, 42.4 megapixels. It is backlit, which means overall we should get better low light performance, better sharpness, all of the benefits that you've been seeing if you've been using Sony cameras with backlit sensors, or any other manufacturer for that matter, because the method is the same. Beyond that, of course, the new body, the same one that we got with the A7 Mark II that I already reviewed, which gave quite a bit more grip, relocated the shutter button to the actual grip itself from the top of the body, and rearranged a few other buttons, but otherwise really was just about adding more heft to the camera and really making it, I think, a better balance for many of its newer FE lenses that are larger in size because they are faster pieces of glass. Beyond that, the most significant things are right here. You have that 5-axis steady shot stabilization on board, which means that both native, more importantly, third-party lenses now are all going to have stabilization, which is huge if you use other lenses with your E-mount camera, in this case, the A7R Mark II. No low-pass filter, just like the A7R before it. But another huge thing, we now have 4K video capture internally. This is something that no camera from Sony, at least an interchangeable lens camera, has had to date within this realm specifically. So this is huge. It's capable of 100 megabits per second in XAVC-S, like all of Sony's other cameras, but you have two different modes. You can go for full frame or Super 35. Full frame does involve pixel binning. The Super 35, on the other hand, crops and does not. So nice flexibility there. And then they've even improved the OLED viewfinder. It has more coverage, it's brighter, they've actually redone it. So there really isn't much that Sony hasn't changed. I mean, they upgraded the sensor, they upgraded the body, they brought in image stabilization for all lenses, including third-party, non-Sony lenses, and of course, non-E-mount lenses. On top of that, 4K video capture, which I've been waiting for in a mirrorless body from Sony, and then an improved viewfinder, all very good things. Here, Sony, by the way, this is all on Sony's website. I'll be including a link to that as well. You can see basically the rear illumination, what they're talking about, going for that back illuminated sensor and all of the benefits. The detail associated with the new sensor, because that extra going to 42 megapixels from the 36, almost a 20% increase in pixels. And of course, over the A7 Mark II, it's nearly double. So they're really defining the product, in my opinion. Some sample photos there, and I can show you what Sony has put up, but it's not really going to do the camera justice. Just as the video I've seen really doesn't show enough yet. Of course, we're looking at 4K video on YouTube. I don't have a RAW file to review. I haven't found one online, but the stills look amazing. And one of the other key improvements here is the autofocus, which I'm glad I just scrolled to right now. And that's because now the hybrid autofocus system is relying on 399 phase detection points, 25 contrast, and that should mean that the 5 frames per second that we're able to achieve autofocus in burst mode will actually be far more accurate. Another thing that I really like, beyond the promise of improved autofocus, but I'll have to wait and see on that, but on paper it sounds good, is the fact that we actually have an electronic shutter now, or first curtain mode. It depends which you actually want to utilize, but the whole point is two major benefits of that. One is that it's silent, so if your subjects are going to be startled, if you're into nature photography, or if you just want more candid shots, even though the camera isn't so small, nor will it be with high quality glass attached to it, still smaller than what it will compete with in the open market here with everyone else. But the point is, you will be less conspicuous with that silent shutter. Another key enhancement beyond that is the fact that silence is great, but also no shutter shock, something that sort of plagued the A7, A7R. When you get into any vibration, specifically the shutter on the A7R, there was a compromise there no matter how much you tried to stabilize. So those are two very big things. So autofocus should be a fantastic improvement. Electronic shutter also should be in every way. Sony explaining the 5-axis steady shot, but really the whole point is that this is the best stabilization in the business. The A7 Mark II proved that on its own, and now we have it as predicted. I mean, it was fairly obvious that the entire body redo and the stabilization was going to make its way to every camera post the A7 Mark II. It was a new standard for full-frame mirrorless, and this camera has bumped that standard up even higher, which is why the price reflects that. You will not find another full-frame mirrorless camera with these specifications, with this sensor, with 4K video capture, really the best of everything, at least on paper. We'll see how it performs in real world. I'm going to go ahead and play this video clip, which you really should check out on your own. This is not going to be in 4K, but just a quick look at what the video looks like, if it queues up. So far, I've been thoroughly impressed by this short, montage of samples. These are still samples, as well as the video that I've seen out of it. Going to go ahead and stop it because realistically, this is more about just letting all of you know what Sony has brought to the table. Now, I mentioned before that pixel binning issue, basically a good approach in my opinion. This was smart. Sony is known for giving us a full readout, so they are doing that, and that's one of the revolutionary things that we get here in the R Mark II is that you do have the ability to go 35mm full frame 16:9 UHD without any compromise, or crop. There is pixel binning, though, as a result of no crop. But that is something that many people will be willing to live with because crop can be a nuisance, to say the least. But if you want better video quality, you can switch over to the Super 35, and there is no pixel binning. You're getting a full sensor readout. So Sony really, again, giving you the best of both worlds. And I'll keep reminding you, you are paying for it. Or Sony's just making sure to build in a really high ceiling for drops as this camera goes on sale. Your guess is as good as mine. I'm just being realistic. They are saying that in terms of the build quality and durability, it has become a tougher camera, and there's no question. If you've held the A7 II and held the A7R or the A7S or the original A7, then you know that that change in body style was a major one. It wasn't insignificant, and I will remind everyone of that as well over and over again. The fact that they've redone the viewfinder is just fantastic, and that's because Sony already had best-in-class EVFs on all of their mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras, specifically, of course, in the full frame area or realm. And now to have a new one, I can't imagine another upgrade basically that I didn't expect that is very much welcomed. I mean, to have more coverage, better overall image quality when you're looking through there, and that is really the best way to frame anything on this camera, even though the LCD is completely functional. By the way, same range with the LCD. You're just going to have a tilting screen. Sony never really has the ability to flip out. That's not something you're going to find on any of their cameras. Sometimes you will get the selfie mode with the full 180-degree tilt, but that's not happening here because of the center-mounted EVF. In terms of other things to know, of course, a wide range of accessories. For those of you worried about, what has Sony done with glass lately, I can tell you actually quite a bit. I mean, that's where the FE lens lineup has grown. I think it's 20 lenses now, and when you think about how far it's come, that's quite a distance. But overall, I mean, that pretty much covers everything that the A7R Mark II has to offer. So we've got that bump up in resolution, just to recount exactly what it brings to the table, recap. And the higher ISO range. We've got 4K video, which to me is something I mentioned earlier I've been waiting for so long in a mirrorless full frame camera from Sony, or even non-full frame. Maybe we'll eventually see something with 4K in the APS-C world from them, but at least for the time being, Sony's focus is on full frame. That's where the money is, clearly $3,200. But that image stabilization, I mean, it really makes this camera a game changer. Granted, 42.4 isn't the highest rated sensor. Many had predicted that this camera was going to sport, but I'm in no way disappointed by the gain, again, a little less than 20% that we're getting over the original R, because you're getting faster autofocus, 4K video, better viewfinder, better stabilization. There was no stabilization in the R, just for those of you unaware. So really, this camera isn't just, again, a refresh, but rather an entirely different animal, and that's why the price also reflects an entirely different feature set. So even though it may be the successor to the A7R, I feel like this really is the successor to the A7R as well as the A7S. Now, I haven't heard anything about an S Mark II, and maybe we aren't going to see one because of something like this. It's really a matter of how Sony did with the camera. I know the A7S was extraordinarily popular, but the price point that they've brought in here really begs, at least to question, or the question, is an A7S Mark II in the works? And if so, I mean, the timeline still works, that it would be the last model to be announced, so we might hear about that after the summer, or sometime towards the end, more of a holiday-esque push. But I have to wonder at $3,200 if we are going to see an A7S Mark II, and if so, what kind of price tag is that camera going to sport? Of course, this already is really impressive. Sony has, I would say, in some ways admitted that the 4K video isn't going to be as clean as what the S has, but not necessarily true if you're using the Super 35 mode. So there's just really a ton to like here, outside of the fact that it's so expensive. But I think that any Sony customer that has already invested heavily in FE glass, or is about to, or even wants to use their already fantastic third-party lenses on a body that's just, again, unmatched, not only in terms of specifications, but also its footprint, in order to bring those to the table, the A7R Mark II is just a fantastic looking beast. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.